Today I'm here with Frian Wadia from Parent to Parent and many other organisations. Welcome, Frian. It's good to have you on the program.
Kia ora. Lovely to be with you, Blake.
The first question is how did you feel about the announcement earlier this year about the reduction to disability supports?
Gosh, it was a huge blow, and I think it took me, to be very honest, a few days to sink in. I felt like it was really unreal and that it would all get reversed very soon. So it took a while for me to actually fully understand that this is, here to stay, not going away. And sadly, things were just going to get worse from there on. Um, so yeah, so it has been really hard. And I think, for me, I always think I have got good supports. I've also got a few natural supports. And so we've got, something that will carry us over this sort of, rough patch. But what about those who don't? What about families who, are really single parents or out in the rural sort of spaces? And they've lost their flexibility and, choice and control. It's a lot harder for them. So yeah, so my heart really goes out to our families who are struggling at the moment.
And how does it affect you for the organisation you work for, yourself, or somebody that you care for, whatever category you fall into?
Oh, look, so there's a few different spaces I'm connected with. One of the spaces is I actually work with Autism New Zealand as an early intervention specialist. So me and my colleagues, we work with the younger families who are recently diagnosed, or are just starting out their journey. And there's so much confusion for them as it is, it's sort of quite tricky when you're starting out, trying to figure out, navigating the systems and what you can do and can't do and can access and can't access. And it's a lot harder for those families. So in that space, I'm seeing there's a lot of sort of, restrictions for them. The other space is, parent to parent. So I am a support parent with parent to parent, and I'm also the president for parent to parent currently. And we connect with a lot of families of disabled tamariki, children who have, medical needs, high medical needs, medically fragile children. So there's a lot of challenges there as well, as families are reaching out to us, trying to clarify, what's going on, what's happening. And there's a lot of confusion for them as well. And on the personal front, I think one of the other challenges that I'm sort of looking at is I've got two sons now who are about to leave school in the next year. And so transitioning for them out of school and into the community, I had all these plans and ideas of what we could do. And now, of course, it's all restricted. So what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward in that enabling good lives, way for my boys is something that I'm contemplating and looking at, how these changes are going to impact us. So yeah, those are just a few of them.
Yeah, and I guess that reflects to what I've heard as a disabled person myself and as an advocating for others, as well as making sure I get the appropriate care. There's so many stories of the same thing,
Absolutely.
very similar. So we had Dane, your CEO, on one of the previous episodes, and what I found striking about what he says is it's getting more difficult for people to obtain a diagnosis, and they're coming to you guys more for that diagnosis. How
Yeah.
much pressure does that put on you, having to take more of that burden? Because
Yeah. Oh, look, Autism New Zealand is a really big organization. So I'm not part of the outreach team. I'm part of the educators team, the early intervention team. So we work with just the young families. We don't do diagnosis, but the challenge with the diagnosis, especially um, rampant with the older kids. The younger kids are still, with the weight and everything sort of going through it. But our kids who are in their teenage years, adults especially, they really, really struggle in terms of finding that diagnosis. And I think for a lot of adults, the diagnosis is not so much about what supports you can get. It's often about their identity and how important it is for them, to understand themselves better. Um, so look, Blake, I can't speak much in terms of, I guess, the pressure that the rest of our team is feeling at Autism New Zealand. But what I can talk to you about is within the parent whānau community and the networks that I connect with. Parents have always had a challenge with diagnosis, especially our kids who are already in school. There's nowhere for them to go, and often they are pushed into accessing private services for assessments and diagnosis, which is really unfair. And the other space that has become really challenging now is not just the assessment diagnosis, but the access to therapy. So, earlier there was flexibility. If you didn't get therapy through your health or education spaces and the child really needed it, parents were able to access that therapy, before the funding cuts happened. But now they can't. And so kids are losing out on sort of the supports that they need. And for parents, I guess they are losing out on the understanding that they need to have, the skills, strategies they need to have to support their children, on an ongoing basis.
So you mentioned that you work from a multitude of organisations. Have you with any of your other organisations had a chance to speak to anybody in government or the disability minister, Minister Upton herself?
I haven't personally, but we have, as part of the networks that I've been part of, we have been doing that. One of the spaces I also do sit on is the National Enabling Good Lives Leadership Group. And again, through that group as well, we're really looking at and trying to make sure that we have the community voices heard. We've got, that choice and control restored to our disabled people and families, which is really, really crucial. Um, and yeah, so there's a lot of, I guess, work happening in that space, trying to connect with the people who can, create the shifts and make the change happen. But it feels really, really disappointing, to be very honest. And it feels like, we're just regressing, moving backwards many, many years, given how long sort of, the community have worked towards the Enabling Good Lives approach.
And when you and your friends have, or colleagues rather, have spoken to the minister, or what kind of response have you had?
I think one of the key messages that the minister keeps putting back is saying that they want to get this right. They don't want it to be a lottery for people depending on where they are living. And the message has been really clear. If you want to change things and you don't want it to be a postcode lottery, then make sure that Enabling Good Lives is available to everybody across the country. And the other thing is, I think it's really important, which is a key message, Blake, for years now, disabled people, families, and service providers have been talking about how the disability sector is not well catered for, well resourced, well budgeted. So I think that's a very critical and key message that we keep saying. You haven't been doing this right for many, many years now, and this is your opportunity to actually do something about it. So yeah, so our message has been quite clear. We want choice and control restored. We want, improvements made to the way the disability sector is resourced and the way disabled people are valued and supported across governments. It's not just about the disability sector, it's across governments. How are disabled people and families being, treated? How are they being catered to and valued across the sectors?
How disappointed does it make you feel when the minister often claims there's been no freezes to residential care, there's been no reduction, when we clearly know there has been?
Oh,
Um,
look,
as a parent and as a advocate yourself.
I'm not surprised. I think that's just political speak and language, to sort of put together and create a good illusion. But the reality is, for people like us who have been in this space advocating for a long time, who have sort of, a reasonably good understanding, I would say, of the way the, sectors work, for our disabled children, people, and families, we're not going to fall for it. And I'm the kind of person who will who's learned over the years, because I've got three boys with different needs, and I've learned to pick my battles, and I'm not gonna bother arguing over the language they use or the front they put up. It's really important we stay focused on the key issues, which are the loss of choice and control, loss of flexibility that we have, and the inadequacy of the supports and services that we've had for many years now.
Have you found the new disability support service engaging so far?
It's too early to say anything, to be very honest. I am based um, in Auckland. I mean, I know all the shifts that are happening, from Faikaha to MSD and stuff like that. I don't think it's so much, Blake. And personally, for me, I haven't seen any changes, but I know families are already starting to see them. However, I just want to acknowledge that these changes are not because things have shifted from FICA to MSD. These changes are because, of the cuts and because of all the changes that are being put. So it doesn't matter where disability support services sat, whether it was with FICA or MSD. The impacts of it would have been felt by our families, due to the restrictions and limitations placed on flexibility.
Yeah, and just to remind the people watching, I've been advocating since I was 7 years old. I got my autism diagnosis when I was 8 years old,
Mhm.
and yeah, so I've been doing, and I'll be 26 very shortly. So I've been doing this a long time, and as I've gotten older and really understood the first, especially the last few years, this is probably the most damaging government toward disability I've seen to date.
Look, I absolutely agree with you, Blake. One of the other spaces I'm involved in is Natina. It's a charitable trust that we set up last year. It's the Neuroscience and Trauma Informed Network Aotearoa. Now, the reason why I set it up was actually because of some of the personal experiences I had and the experiences I saw that our children, disabled children, were having in the education space and across the board. We don't realize, but a lot of these systemic policies, practices, actually cause trauma for us. When they don't value us, when they don't allow autonomy for us, when we get treated like we are not, valued, or that our children are not valued. So for me, the experiences over the years have impacted quite significantly. And at one point, I realized I was, going through and experiencing trauma. And so that's how I started my journey into what can we do? How can we change things? So the changes that have happened recently are definitely what I would call, um, you know, the cause of systemic trauma and collective trauma for our group of disabled people, families, in this community and in this time. And it's not okay. Government needs to take responsibility for it. We wrote to the minister as well when the changes came out, and we talked to them. We mentioned to them in our email stating how important it was for them to become trauma informed, and to realize that the changes that they were putting in place are actually causing trauma to an entire community, and that's not okay. But it seems to be falling on deaf ears, to be very honest, Blake. So yeah.
And how did you feel going back to the beginning? How did you feel about it being put on Facebook? I was so demoralized by that. It was so sad.
Look, absolutely, absolutely. And I think so many of us were blindsided. It just did not uphold the manner of our community and our people by doing something like this. And it felt very underhanded and sneaky, to be very honest. Let's sort of not talk about it so there's no opportunity for people to even express themselves. And I think, Blake, when I talk about sort of being trauma informed, communication, how you communicate with people is a key part of being trauma informed. Partnership and collaboration is a key part of being trauma informed. And our community wasn't given any of those opportunities to, sort of hear things up front and then be able to express themselves either. But I must say, I'm extremely proud of our community, everybody who has rallied and, stood up. Apologize, I've got a bad cold and cough.
Um, how how impressed have you been by the opposition's application? Mainly, we had Kahirangi Carter from the Greens, Priyanka Radhikrishnan from Labour, Mr. Hipkins.
Oh, look, I'm laughing because I kind of feel very annoyed because they had the opportunity to do so much when they were in government, and they did not give it their all. They did not, get EGL underway across the country. And I find it hard to say, what they're doing right now is good or not, because I know when they had the opportunity, they missed it. They didn't, do enough. So for me, that is really, really annoying that, empty words and support is not going to do anything. We need actions. We need changes to happen, to make things better for our community. And they didn't do it when they had the opportunity. So I'm honestly really disappointed that they haven't done, better when they had the opportunity and the time to do it.
Yeah, but what I would say is it's not just a Labour problem, it's not just a national problem. I think it's a consecutive government problem. No one has got this right.
Yeah.
And I question whether a government approach in the future is the right way. Do we need a separate board that makes the decisions away from the government? Maybe not a Faikaha again, but maybe a board that makes all the decisions on behalf of the government.
Oh, look, absolutely agree. We have so this is the other thing. In the education space, I've done quite a bit of advocacy over the years. We've always said that we will never achieve inclusive education, quality education for our disabled children, unless we have a cross government agreement and approach commitment towards inclusive education. And I think it's the same thing around the disability community, not just the disability supports and services, but how do the different government sectors, how do the different government parties, the political parties, how do they all come together to ensure that disabled children, people, and whānau are valued and that they are well supported? That has to come across. I would say it's more than just the board, Blake. I think it needs to be across government sort of, um, commitment that needs to be made. And again, it needs to be across the sectors, not just, for the disability support services. There's so much that needs to change and happen. Yeah.
My final question to you is, and I'm going to give you the floor to deliver this message. What's your message to the minister to encourage her to appear on programs like this so we can hear her side of the story?
Oh, look, I think, collaboration and partnership can achieve a lot. We have seen that when you partner, when you collaborate, and when you do it with integrity, and in authenticity, you can make some really good shifts happen. And so I think I would encourage the minister to say, come along, because this is your opportunity to not only hear what the community has to say, but also, what you have to say. It's an opportunity for you to work with our community and come up with some really innovative solutions. The reality is when, you know, you are in a bind, you're in a tight spot, people get creative, people get innovative. And, if we come together, we can really definitely make some good changes happen and come up with some good solutions. So yeah, that's what I would say to her. Encourage her to definitely come along and correro with you and the community.
Well, I'll get you to stay there while we upload our file, but to the viewers, I'll say thank you, Frian, for coming on the program, and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you. Lovely chatting with you, Blake.